in the way that it's super unique, you're also representing a lot of girls who have dreams like yours, who look like you, who look like me. So we're just over the moon, for lack of a better word.
Thank you.
I had to do it. Being the first to be able to do something is already such a daunting task. There's a pressure, there's a privilege, there's a lot that comes with that. And it's such a unique situation for you because it's going to space. That's not something that many people are going to get the chance to do in this lifetime or any other. So what does it mean to you to really literally take that first step?
Yeah, so I'm the first Mexican-born woman in space. We did have a man, but even that is an interesting story because it was 40 years ago. And so after those 40 years, nothing had happened until my mission came around. And so even though someone had already done it, although a man, it was such a long time ago. And no woman had been able to achieve it yet. And then especially when we think about Latinidad and Latino culture and all of the machismo that comes with that, it's just such a complicated thing to try to achieve. So it's one thing to be a little girl with dreams and hopes and it's cute when you're 7 years old and you're saying you want to be an astronaut. But now you're a 17, 18-year-old Mexican girl and it's no longer cute. Now you're just being ridiculous and you're being unrealistic, and you need to think about what's actually important, which is financial stability and taking care of your family. Because as the older sister, a lot of that responsibility falls on you as well. And so
older sister here too, so attest to that, okay?
Yeah.
And that's a very real thing that you just mentioned, where it's like you have to now listen to all of that outside noise telling you what you can do, what you can't do, what's realistic, what isn't realistic, but then also some internal debate. I'm sure there were moments where internally you were like, is this something that's even doable? Did you ever experience imposter syndrome throughout this time?
Definitely. I mean, there were so many times where I had all the paperwork filled out to just completely drop out of my major. I was like, I cannot do this anymore. And even that is so complicated because it's not black and white. It's not like saying, this is too hard for me, so I'm just going to do something else. This is already a very difficult subject. This is already a very difficult thing I'm trying to do. And then we have to add on top of that all the different pressures that we have. Family pressures, social pressures, the pressure of being a woman in a STEM career, of being a minority in a STEM career, right? All the people around you, your classmates and your professors, automatically not believing in you just based on what you look like, being on a scholarship and having to have a certain GPA, otherwise you lose it. So all of those different pressures, being the older sister, and if you don't do it, now your siblings are going to think they can't do it either. Everything comes together, and even though something by itself is already hard, now you add in all of those other factors and it just feels impossible in the moment.
But you made the impossible possible. What does it mean to you to be able to, rep Mexico literally in this world as you navigate this world and clearly beyond this world?
It's a big responsibility, and I understood that when I realized what this was going to be, because this was no longer about me. Right. This was no longer about me following my goals, my dreams, and building this career. This is something that is going to inspire and motivate a lot of people. And I also had to understand that in Mexico, these opportunities do not exist. A lot of people, especially in Latin America, they ask me, what can we do to inspire and motivate the youth to pursue these careers in science and in engineering and in space? And I'm just like, why would you want to do that if you can't provide the opportunity so that they actually do something about it?
Right.
Inspiration is not hard if they actually have somewhere to go. Ooh, that is the key. That's what I've been working on. I've had to realize that.
Yeah.
That this is a big responsibility. I have a big voice. People with a lot of power over the country are listening to me, and I have to do something about it. So I've been able to speak with the president of Mexico, the canciller, who is the person in charge of all the foreign affairs, I've been able to speak with so many different secretaries of departments and governors and Congress people and senators, all with the hopes of kickstarting this space industry, allowing them to understand the importance through my own experience in the field, my own experience in this mission, but also my work at NASA. And my understanding of the way that their industry has been working in the past few years, which, if we're being totally realistic, is completely dependent on another country, 100%. And so you cannot have full freedom as a country if you don't have technological freedom, especially with something as important as your communication satellites. Can you imagine? And
I literally cannot. And I also feel like the other element that we have to kind of like get to in order for us to get here is like, how did you even like fall in love with the idea of engineering and NASA? And like, at what point when you were growing up were you like, actually, yes, this is my calling?
I remember that I was always just tearing things up. Every time because my brother was always so messy and he would always break all of his electronics. My parents would get so mad. But I would get so excited because I would go and grab them and open them up and just look inside.
Wow.
It was just something that I just felt so curious about. And truthfully, at that age, you don't understand that there are differences between you and your classmates or even you and your siblings.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of just assume that what you're doing is something everyone does.
Right.
It's just something that everyone likes. I guess you don't even think about it that much. And so I was doing those things, but I didn't really connect the dots yet, that this was something that I truly felt interested in, that maybe a lot of little Mexican girls normally don't. But that's what's so beautiful about it, because so my dad is an electrical engineer and I had access to all of this stuff in my house. To us, it was, it was just stuff that's lying around the house, this component or this like piece of a spare computer or this spare keyboard that he just built. And it was like, that is so cool. I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to just come up with my own things to build and invent and create, because I look at it as a very creative career, which not a lot of people do. But when you think about what it actually entails, it really is. You're creating the technology that's going to be used in the future generation, something that does not exist.
Absolutely. And it's like, if you are not the one creating it and being in, like, seeing it as a creative space, then like that changes like the course of our future as we know it, the way that we communicate in the future and the way that technology progresses.
Absolutely.
It also made me think, where were you when I was little and I used to break the VCR, like used to destroy it? So basically I was your little brother. Like my mom used to want to kill me because I was like, I need to see what's inside of it only to break it. But like, that's where you could have come in and help us. But, it's funny. I think another really amazing part of your story is just the fact that you're doing this partnership with Samsung, where you're, helping content creators be able to, define and refine what their passions are, but also figure out ways that they can monetize it and, kind of like expand this like scope of what we've come to know as like a content creator. As you look ahead, have you noticed that your passions have changed at all? Or have you felt like any sort of transformations like throughout this like ongoing partnership with Samsung?
I think something that I've realized in the recent years, and not only in myself, but in a lot of people that decide to go and venture off on their own in their own businesses and in their own careers, is kind of us going back to childhood and what we were interested in and what our hobbies were when we were kids.
Yep.
Because you start growing up and you start becoming really affected by society's opinions, and this idea of having to have a realistic career and have a stable career. And so you have to just fit this very specific mold and go this very specific way. And if you say you want to be a doctor, everyone's going to be okay with that. But as soon as you say you want to be an artist, and now suddenly that's not okay. Suddenly you're not going to be supported. So a lot of people that have some of these really amazing passions from childhood, end up letting go of that in pursuit of what they've been told is the right thing to do, which is to follow these molds. And when you finally start to shed a lot of those opinions, but also your livelihood no longer relies on anyone else but yourself,
right,
is when you're really able to start going back to that and saying, okay, what is it that I actually want to do? What do I want to create? And I remember when I was little, my mom used to always say, whatever it is that you like, whatever in this entire world, I can promise you there's a way to make money. But you have to be really good at it. And it doesn't matter if it's this, and they might look completely irrelevant and unrelated. If you want to do both, there's a way to bring them together. You just have to be creative. And there's a way to bring them together and make money off of it. For me, when I was younger, there were two things that I was just so passionate about, and that was electricity and outer space. Mm-hmm. And when we look at my career, it makes perfect sense because I decided to become an electrical engineer for the space industry.
I really love that phrase that you mentioned where it kind of leans on, like honoring your inner child. And I feel like oftentimes, like as you get older, we kind of feel like we've sometimes maybe you feel like you have let your inner child down, or maybe you're not where you had originally intended to be. But it is so true that just naturally as people, we honor that inner child in so many different ways, whether it's the type of content that we consume, what calms us down, what are the things that, like finding those key points. But I feel like what you've just outlined is like you really are like stepping in the right path and staying the course when you're able to, like look back at your inner child and know that you're like making her proud. That's a big thing. I mean, when I was little, I wanted to interview people and talk to people, and I used to make my friends film me interviewing them and doing a fake little American Idol. And went to college, that went away. I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer, and now here I am sitting.
I love it.
News.
You came back.
There we go. So we also know that Barbie actually honored you for International Women's Day. They were honoring women in STEM with a Barbie doll. Talk about that, because we would all want a Barbie doll. What was your feeling? How would you feel? Like, come on, like that's everything. You got to talk to us about that.
So the Barbie is definitely a very full circle moment for me, because when I was little, I played with Barbies, but my family couldn't really afford to get me the ones that I wanted. And so we would always just have, my sister and I would have to play with whatever it is we were given.
Right.
And a lot of the times it wasn't necessarily dolls that you really felt like they represented you. We can think about Barbie throughout the years, and it's very famously known that Barbie has a million different careers and jobs.
Of course, she stays with millions of jobs.
But ones that we were getting as hand-me-downs, it's not like I could select, I want my Barbie to be a pilot, I want my Barbie to be this and that. It was a lot of the very stereotypical versions of Barbie that we were getting. And so I didn't really feel represented by them. So what I would do is I would change them myself. I would give them different outfits and different clothes. I would take my brother's toys and I would build fake, Lego rocket ships and put them in there. Or I would grab his own cars for his toy races, and I'd be like, no, you are Barbie NASCAR driver. and from the beginning, it was like Barbie with an apron, and it's like, not anymore. To be able to have this is kind of like a gift for that little girl that had to do it on her own, and to create this whole image for her doll that didn't necessarily feel like it was intended for her.
Right.
And not only that, but also to see the reaction that the doll had. I mean, it went completely viral everywhere on all the different platforms, and that tells us something. That tells us how big of a need there still is, especially for Latinas, to be able to just kind of give an ode to that younger version of themselves, but then also that need that they still see and feel for more representation in toys for little girls, for the little girls that are currently with us. I mean, walk through those aisles today. Why are they still separate? Why do we still have boys and girls toy aisles? That doesn't make sense.
It's exciting and it's honoring something that you've always wanted. It also reflects the need for, like, this could be like a precedent and could set a precedent for what representation can be like in the future, or could be like starting right now. So totally appreciate that perspective. What do you have to say for the young Latinas out there, whether it be advice that your mom gave you, advice that you picked up along the way? What do you want to leave them with?
I think it's really important to always ask ourselves the question, what is it that I want? Because there are going to be so many people throughout your life, and especially people that are very close to you, that are going to be trying to tell you who you should be and what you should do. But only you can answer that question for yourself. Yep. And it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. And it doesn't have to work out at the beginning, Because a lot of people, what they say is, well, why would you do that? You're probably going to fail. It's probably not going to work out. Okay, then it doesn't work out.
Right.
But at least I tried, and at least I did it, and now I know. And if that wasn't the way, then maybe I go another way. But it's up to me only to make that choice and to maybe have those mistakes and have those failures so that we can move on and keep going. And it doesn't matter what it is. And I think that especially when it comes to young Latinas, we need to stop pushing them into certain directions, and we need to stop pretending like certain careers or certain paths are not good enough. Because if that's what they're passionate about and that's what they care about, then absolutely it's good enough. It's more than good enough. What more could you ask for than to spend your life doing exactly what it is that you want to do?
Absolutely. 1000%. I think that being able to share that perspective, sometimes you just need a reminder that what you are doing is not only, as you said, is it good enough, but it is more than good enough. And when you follow your passions, you really can't lose in any sense of the word. So I feel like I've had goosebumps this entire conversation.